So you'll place that device between my legs. The question lingered in the air, thick with tension and potential. Paul Holmes, a 32-year-old NASA engineer, stood frozen, his mind racing to comprehend the alien diplomat's words. This was not how he had envisioned first contact would unfold. The day had begun like any other in Houston, Texas.
Clear skies, sweltering heat, and the constant buzz of a city in motion. Then, without warning, reports surged in of an unidentified object descending from the atmosphere. Within hours, Paul found himself part of a hastily assembled first contact team, speeding towards a remote field where the alien craft had landed. As they neared the location, Paul's heart raced in his chest. Years of training and countless simulations hadn't prepared him for this moment. The sleek, otherworldly vessel towered before them, its surface shimmering with an iridescent glow that defied earthly physics. A hush fell over the human team as a panel on the spacecraft slid open. Stepping out into the Texas sun were the Lephisians, a previously unknown alien race. Their appearance was both familiar and utterly strange. Humanoid in form but with skin that shifted colors like a living mood ring. At the forefront of the alien group stood Xander, the female Levian diplomat. Her gaze swept over the gathered humans, pausing briefly on each face before settling on Paul. Her eyes widened, then drifted downward, fixating on his lower body. That's when she posed the question that would change everything. Paul's mind spun. Was this a mistranslation? A cultural misunderstanding? Or something more? He glanced at his colleagues, their faces a mix of shock, embarrassment, and barely contained amusement. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. One wrong move could derail years of scientific progress and potential interstellar cooperation. Clearing his throat, Paul attempted to redirect the conversation to safer ground. "Welcome to Earth," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "We're honored to." But Xander wasn't finished. She gestured emphatically towards Paul's groin, her translator device working overtime. "Your anatomy fascinates me," she continued. "Lethifian biology is quite different. I'm curious about human reproduction." The air crackled with tension. Behind Xander, more Lelians emerged from the craft, their color-shifting skin reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions. Some appeared intrigued, others concerned. It was clear that this encounter was veering far off script for both species. As Paul struggled to formulate a response, he became acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about answering an awkward question. It was about bridging a gap between two civilizations, each with their own customs, taboos, and biological realities. In the distance, the sound of approaching vehicles signaled the arrival of government officials and military personnel. The pressure mounted. Paul knew he had to act quickly to address Xander's inquiry, without causing offense or misunderstanding. Taking a deep breath, Paul steeled himself. He was no longer just a NASA engineer. He was humanity's ambassador, thrust into a role he never anticipated. The fate of future human-Lacian relations hung on his next words. As he opened his mouth to speak, Paul realized that this moment would be studied, analyzed, and debated for generations to come. Whatever happened next would shape the course of human history. The question that had initiated it all echoed in his mind. "So you'll place that device between my legs." It was time to respond. And the world held its breath. Paul took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. He spoke carefully, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. "Xander, I appreciate your curiosity about human biology. However, discussions about reproduction are considered quite personal in our culture. Perhaps we could start with a more general overview of human anatomy." Xander's skin rippled with a mix of blue and green hues, her translator device whirring as she processed Paul's words. "Of course. I apologize if I've caused any discomfort. Please educate me about your species." Paul launched into a concise scientific explanation of human biology, focusing on the basics of anatomy and physiology. As he spoke, he noticed the tension in the air dissipating. His colleagues visibly relaxed, and the Learians leaned in, their skin pulsing with colors that seemed to indicate interest and engagement. "Fascinating," Xander said when Paul finished. "Our biology is quite different. Levincians reproduce through a symbiotic process involving a third party." This revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the human team.
Dr. Marcus Chen, who had just arrived on the scene, stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Chen, a xenobiologist. Would you be willing to let us conduct some non-invasive scans to learn more about your physiology?" Xander conferred briefly with her team before nodding her assent. As Dr. Chen set up his equipment, Paul noticed a convoy of black SUVs approaching. The cavalry had arrived. Ambassador Jonathan Reed emerged from the lead vehicle. His tailored suit, a stark contrast to the dust. He strode purposefully towards the group, flanked by security personnel. "I'll take it from here," Reed announced smoothly, inserting himself between Paul and Xander. "I'm Ambassador Reed, official representative of the United States government." Paul felt a twinge of frustration as he was pushed to the sidelines. He had just begun to establish a rapport with the Levianians, and now Reed was taking over. Xander, however, seemed to sense Paul's discomfort. She turned to him and Dr. Chen. "Perhaps you'd like a tour of our vessel while the ambassador and I discuss diplomatic matters?" Before Reed could object, Paul and Dr. Chen were following Xander into the alien craft. The interior was a marvel of technology, with sleek, curved surfaces that seemed to shift and change as they walked. "This is incredible," Paul breathed, his engineer's mind racing to understand the principles behind what he was seeing. "Your propulsion systems must be far beyond anything we've developed." Xander began explaining some of the ship's basic functions, her words painting a picture of technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. Paul's excitement grew as he realized the potential implications for human space exploration. Suddenly, a piercing alarm cut through their conversation. Xander's skin flashed a deep red as she rushed towards what appeared to be the ship's control room. Paul and Dr. Chen exchanged a glance before hurrying after her. The control room was a flurry of activity, with Lemnian crew members frantically manipulating holographic displays. Xander turned to Paul, her voice tight with concern. "Our life support systems are malfunctioning. We're not sure why." Paul's NASA training kicked in. "May I take a look? I have experience with complex life support systems." After a moment's hesitation, Xander nodded. Paul approached the nearest console, his eyes darting over the unfamiliar symbols and readouts. Despite the alien nature of the technology, he began to see patterns, to understand the flow of information. "There," he said, pointing to a fluctuating graph. "It looks like there's some kind of interference." "When did this start?" "Shortly after we landed," one of the Lacanian engineers replied. A theory began to form in Paul's mind. "It could be Earth's magnetic field. Your systems might not be calibrated to account for it." Working alongside the Levian engineers, Paul helped implement a series of adjustments. Slowly, the alarms quieted, and the life support readings stabilized. Xander's skin shifted to a warm golden hue. "Thank you, Paul. Your quick thinking may have saved us all." As the crisis subsided, Paul became aware of how close he and Xander were standing. There was a moment of connection, a shared look of relief, and something more. Dr. Chen, observing from the sidelines, raised an eyebrow, his scientific mind already formulating new questions about interspecies compatibility. Outside the ship, Ambassador Reed paced anxiously. The tour had gone on far longer than expected, and he was beginning to fear the worst. His hand hovered over his phone, ready to call for military intervention. Just as Reed was about to make the call, the ship's hatch opened. Paul emerged first, followed by Dr. Chen and Xander. The relief on Reed's face quickly turned to confusion as he saw the easy camaraderie between the human and Lacanian representatives. Paul knew he had to act fast to prevent any misunderstandings. He stepped forward, addressing both Reed and Xander. "Ambassador, we've just experienced a small technical issue aboard the Legan vessel. Thanks to our combined efforts, we were able to resolve it quickly. I believe this incident has demonstrated the potential benefits of human-Alayan cooperation." Xander nodded in agreement. Indeed, Paul's assistance was invaluable. "Perhaps we should discuss how we can further collaborate, especially in the realm of space exploration." Quote. Reed's expression shifted from suspicion to interest. What other challenges and discoveries lay ahead as humans and Lefikians learned to coexist? And how would his own role in this historic encounter shape the days to come? As Paul and Dr. Chen stepped out of the Lacian spacecraft, the Texas sun momentarily blinded them. When their eyes adjusted, they found themselves facing a scene that made their hearts sink. The landing site, once occupied by a small welcoming committee, now bristled with military personnel. Dozens of armed soldiers formed a perimeter around the alien vessel, their weapons trained on the sleek craft. Ambassador Reed strode towards them, his face a mask of barely restrained fury. "What in the world were you thinking?" he hissed, grabbing Paul's arm. "I was moments away from ordering a full breach of that ship." Paul instinctively positioned himself between the ambassador and the Levenian delegation emerging behind him. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. We encountered a technical issue with their life support systems, but it's been resolved peacefully." Reed's eyes narrowed. "A technical issue? And you expect me to believe that?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, his usually calm demeanor tinged with urgency. "It's true, Ambassador. We witnessed their advanced technology firsthand. The potential for scientific exchange here is unprecedented." Paul nodded, seizing the opportunity. "Their systems are light years ahead of ours, the legends. They'll be willing to share information about their propulsion technology. Think about what this could mean for our space program." As Paul spoke, he noticed Xander's skin rippling with shades of deep blue and purple, colors he was beginning to associate with anxiety. The Ladigian diplomat's eyes darted between the armed soldiers, her posture growing increasingly tense. Reed seemed to deflate slightly, the implications of Paul's words sinking in. "I see. Well, regardless of the potential benefits, we can't continue discussions here. We're moving the delegation to a secure military facility for further talks." Paul felt a gentle touch on his arm. He turned to see Xander, her skin now a pale, sickly green. The translator device at her throat buzzed to life. "Paul, we cannot go to an enclosed facility. Our people, we fear small spaces. It is deeply rooted in our history." Understanding dawned on Paul. He recalled the vast open architecture of the Levian ship. "Ambassador," he said, turning back to Reed, "I don't think that will work. The Levians have an aversion to enclosed spaces. It's a cultural and possibly biological issue." Reed frowned, clearly frustrated by this new complication. "Then what do you suggest, Mr. Holmes? We can't exactly conduct interstellar diplomacy in an open field." Paul's mind raced, piecing together a solution. "What if we set up a temporary compound right here? We could bring in the necessary equipment and security, but design it to accommodate Levinian needs that would show our willingness to adapt and cooperate." For a moment, Reed looked like he might refuse outright. Then slowly he nodded. "It's unorthodox, but it might work. I'll make some calls." Over the next 48 hours, the open field transformed into a hive of activity. Construction crews worked around the clock to erect a series of large open pavilions. Paul found himself at the center of it all, coordinating between human architects and Lacanian advisors to create spaces that blended functionality with alien comfort. As Paul oversaw the installation of a transparent dome over one of the larger structures, a new voice caught his attention. "Mr. Holmes? A word?" He turned to see a woman in military fatigues approaching, her crisp uniform and commanding presence marking her as someone of rank. "I'm Major Sarah Thompson," she said, her tone clipped and professional. "I've been assigned to oversee security for this operation." Paul extended his hand, which the Major shook firmly. "Pleasure to meet you, Major. I hope we can work together to ensure everyone's safety while maintaining a welcoming atmosphere." Major Thompson's expression remained neutral. "My priority is security, Mr. Holmes. I've read the reports of your unauthorized tour of the alien vessel. I hope you understand that kind of breach can't happen again." Paul felt a flush of irritation but kept his voice level. "With all due respect, Major, that breach led to a technological exchange that could advance our space program by decades. Sometimes a little trust goes a long way." The Major's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, they were interrupted by Dr. Chen rushing towards them, his face alight with excitement. "Paul! Major! You need to see this!" he exclaimed, waving a tablet. "I've been analyzing the data from our scans of the Levians, their reproductive process. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. And get this, the enzymes involved in their symbiotic reproduction might be the key to curing several genetic diseases in humans." Paul's eyes widened at the implications. Even Major Thompson seemed to soften slightly at the news. As word of the Latian visit spread, the compound became a hub of global attention. News helicopters circled overhead, held at bay by a no-fly zone. Diplomats from around the world arrived, eager to meet the alien visitors. The United Nations convened an emergency session debating protocols for international interaction with the Levasians. Amidst the chaos, Paul found moments of quiet with Xander. They walked the perimeter of the compound, sharing stories of their respective worlds. Paul felt drawn to Xander's quick mind and endless curiosity. Yet he couldn't ignore the voice in the back of his mind, reminding him of the vast biological differences between them. One evening, as they stood watching the sunset, Xander turned to Paul, her skin shimmering with a soft, rosy hue he hadn't seen before. "Paul, I..." Her words were cut off by a brilliant flash in the sky. They both looked up, startled. A streak of light cut across the darkening heavens, too controlled to be a meteor. Xander's skin pulsed with rapid color changes. She raised a device on her wrist, scanning the sky. Her voice was tight when she spoke. "It's another ship, not Levenian." Paul felt his heart rate quicken. "Are you sure?" Xander nodded, her eyes still fixed on the sky. "The energy signature is unfamiliar, Paul. I don't know who they are, or why they're here." As alarms began to sound across the compound, Paul realized that the delicate balance they had achieved was about to be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated. The journey of first contact was far from finished. It was about to become far more complicated. The approaching vessel streaked across the sky, its sleek form unmistakably alien. Paul felt Xander's grip tighten on his arm, her skin pulsing with rapid color changes that telegraphed her alarm. "We need to get to the command center," Paul said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Xander nodded, and they sprinted across the compound, dodging between hastily erected structures and bewildered personnel. As they burst into the command center, they found it already a hive of frantic activity. Major Sarah Thompson stood at the center, barking orders and coordinating responses. Screens flickered with satellite imagery and data streams tracking the descent of the unknown craft. "Mr. Holmes, explain!" Thompson demanded as she caught sight of Paul. Before he could respond, Dr. Marcus Chen burst through the door, his lab coat askew and his eyes wide with excitement and fear. "It's the Vorak!" he exclaimed, waving a tablet. "I've analyzed the energy signature. It matches nothing in our databases." But he turned to Xander, his expression questioning. Xander's skin darkened to a deep, stormy blue. "He's right," she said, her translator struggling to keep up with her rapid speech. "The Vorak are a rival species from our sector of space. They've sought to conquer Lithinian territories for generations." Major Thompson's eyes narrowed. "Hostile?" "Extremely," Xander replied. The room fell silent as they watched the Vorak ship touch down in a clearing several miles from the compound. Moments later, a delegation emerged. Paul felt a chill run down his spine as he saw the Vorak for the first time. Their leader, a towering reptilian figure with gleaming scales and wickedly sharp claws, radiated an aura of menace. "That's Commander Kraz," Xander whispered, her voice tinged with fear and disgust. Ambassador Reed strode into the command center, his face a mask of determination. "What's the situation?" Paul stepped forward, quickly summarizing what they knew. "Sir, I strongly advise against meeting with them. The Vorak are known aggressors. We should—" "Nonsense," Reed interrupted. "We can't refuse to meet with them. It could provoke an incident. I'll hear them out." Paul exchanged a worried glance with Xander as Reed left to prepare for the meeting. "This is bad," he muttered. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Paul and Xander worked feverishly, compiling data on Lemaian contributions and the potential benefits of their partnership with humanity. They presented their findings to key decision-makers, including Major Thompson and Dr. Chen, hoping to counteract whatever propaganda the Vorak might spread. Their fears proved well-founded. As reports from Reed's meeting with the Vorak trickled in, it became clear that Commander Kraz was painting the Latanians as deceitful manipulators. The Vorak offered advanced weapons technology in exchange for an alliance, playing on human fears and ambitions. Tensions escalated rapidly. A group of Vorak soldiers attempted to infiltrate the Lacomian ship, leading to a skirmish at the edge of the compound. Major Thompson mobilized her security forces, intervening to prevent all-out war. Amidst the chaos, Paul noticed something odd. The Levanian systems were malfunctioning again, similar to the life support issue from earlier. As he studied the readouts, a pattern emerged. "Xander!" he called, excitement building in his voice. "Look at this! The interference! It's not random, it's targeted." Xander's eyes widened as she examined the data. "You're right. But how? Paul's mind raced. What if the Vorak had been sabotaging your systems all along? It would explain the earlier malfunction and why it's happening again. Now, with this realization, Paul knew he had to act. He approached Major Thompson, outlining his theory and proposing a risky plan.
You want to do what? Thompson asked, incredulous.
A diplomatic tour of the Vorak ship, Paul repeated. It's the only way to confirm my suspicions and potentially find evidence of their sabotage. Thompson considered for a long moment before nodding. All right, but I'm coming with you. And at the first sign of trouble, we're out. The tour of the Vorak ship was tense, to say the least. Paul's eyes darted around, searching for anything out of place. Then he saw it. A small device, almost hidden, emitting a faint pulse. Using his engineering knowledge and a healthy dose of intuition, he managed to disable it while pretending to examine a control panel. As they exited the ship, Paul's heart raced. They had the evidence they needed, but the danger was nowhere near the end. Commander Kraz stood waiting, his reptilian eyes narrowed in suspicion. What did you do? Kraz hissed, advancing on Paul. Paul stood his ground, acutely aware of Thompson's hand on her weapon.
We've exposed your deception, Commander.
The sabotage ends now. For a moment, it seemed Kraz might attack. Then Major Thompson's squad arrived, weapons at the ready. Leave Earth now! Thompson's voice was cold steel. The evidence of the Vorak's duplicity turned the tide. Ambassador Reed, presented with irrefutable proof of their deception, ordered the Vorak to depart immediately. As their ship rose into the sky, a collective sigh of relief swept through the compound.
In the aftermath, Paul found himself hailed as a hero. His actions had prevented a potential disaster and strengthened the human-Lescalian alliance. As he stood with Xander watching the sunset, he felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. You were amazing, Xander said, her skin shimmering with warm golden hues. Paul smiled, but before he could respond, a commotion near the compound entrance caught their attention. A sleek, official-looking vehicle had arrived, and from it emerged a woman in a crisp military uniform adorned with admiral's insignia.
Who's that? Paul asked, noticing the way everyone seemed to snap to attention as she passed.
Admiral Helena Frost, Major Thompson said, approaching from behind.
United Earth Defense. Looks like things are about to change around here. As Admiral Frost strode purposefully towards the command center, Paul couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger, more complex chapter in Earth's venture into interstellar politics. Admiral Helena Frost strode into the command center, her presence immediately commanding attention. The room fell silent as she surveyed the assembled personnel, her steel-gray eyes taking in every detail.
Admiral on deck, Major Thompson called out, snapping to attention. Frost nodded curtly, at ease.
I need a full situation report now. As the senior officers huddled around her, Paul couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Admiral's arrival marked a shift in the air, a tightening of control that he could almost physically feel. Over the next few days, that feeling solidified into reality. New security protocols were implemented with ruthless efficiency. Checkpoints sprang up overnight, dividing the compound into strictly regulated zones. Paul found himself spending more time flashing his IAD badge than actually working. The changes hit the science teams particularly hard.
Dr. Chen paced his lab like a caged animal, fuming at the new restrictions on his Luretian tissue samples.
This is madness, he exclaimed, waving a denied request form in Paul's face. How am I supposed to continue my research with these bureaucratic shackles? Paul sympathized, but he had his own problems. The time he spent with Xander had been drastically reduced, limited to brief supervised meetings that felt more like debriefings than conversations. One afternoon, Paul found himself in yet another tense meeting with Admiral Frost and her staff. The topic: the disabled Vorak sabotage device. Mr. Holmes, Frost said, fixing him with her penetrating gaze. You're familiar with this technology. I want you to lead a team to reverse engineer it. We need a planetary defense system, and we need it yesterday. Paul blinked in surprise. Admiral, with all due respect, that's not my area of expertise. I'm an engineer, not a weapons specialist.
Frost's expression hardened.
You're the only one who has hands-on experience with both human and alien tech. Make it work, Holmes. That's an order. Quote, as Paul dove into the project, he found himself working longer hours, often late into the night. The complex integration of Vorak technology with Earth systems proved to be a Herculean task. More than once, he wished he could consult with Xander, but access to the Lemation had become increasingly restricted. One evening, as Paul struggled with a particularly tricky bit of code, he received an unexpected visitor. Major Thompson entered his lab, her usual stern expression softened by a hint of concern. "Holmes, got a minute?" Paul nodded, grateful for the distraction. "What's on your mind?" Major Thompson hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "I've noticed some unusual behavior among the Lefenian visitors. They've been collecting soil samples, conducting experiments in their quarters. It could be nothing, but in this climate, everything looks suspicious," Paul finished for her. Thompson nodded grimly. "I've reported it to Admiral Frost. She's ordered an investigation. Just keep your eyes open, okay?" As she left, Paul felt a weight settle in his chest. The trust they had worked so hard to build with the Lakians was eroding, and he felt powerless to stop it. Days blurred into weeks. Paul's work on the defense system progressed, but not without complications. The integration of Vorak tech caused widespread electromagnetic interference, disrupting global communications. As he grappled with this new problem, a realization struck him. The solution might lie in combining Vorak and Lethean technology. But before he could pursue this idea, chaos erupted. Alarms blared across the compound. Paul's lab door burst open, revealing a wildly frantic Dr. Chen. "We're under attack!" Chen shouted over the din. "Some kind of human extremist group. They've breached the outer perimeter!" Paul's heart raced as he followed Chen through the corridors. They turned a corner and nearly collided with Xander and Major Thompson. "Quick, in here!" Thompson ordered, ushering them into a nearby lab. As Thompson secured the door, Paul turned to Xander, her skin pulsing with rapid color changes, betraying her fear and confusion. "What's happening?" Xander asked, her translator struggling to keep up with her rapid speech. "I don't know," Paul admitted, "but we need to stay calm and figure out a way to communicate with the outside." As they worked to establish contact, Paul found himself working closer with Xander than he had in weeks. Despite the dire circumstances, he felt a familiar warmth in her presence, a rekindling of their connection. Hours passed in a tense blur of activity. They managed to repurpose some lab equipment into a makeshift communications device, allowing them to coordinate with security forces outside. Paul's understanding of Luanian physiology, gleaned from his time with Xander, proved crucial in developing strategies to protect both human and alien lives. When the crisis finally ended, the compound was left shaken but standing. The attack had served as a brutal wake-up call, highlighting the fragility of their situation. In the aftermath, Paul found himself summoned to Admiral Frost's office. To his surprise, Xander was there as well. Frost's expression was grim as she addressed them. "Recent events have made it clear that we need better integration and understanding between our species. Mr. Holmes, your actions during the crisis demonstrated the value of such collaboration." Paul nodded, sensing there was more to come. "That's why I'm assigning you a new mission," Frost continued. "You will travel to the Levian homeworld as Earth's first ambassador. Your objective: negotiate a formal military alliance and secure access to advanced Lien defense technology." Paul's mind reeled at the implications. He glanced at Xander, whose skin shimmered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. As they left the Admiral's office, Paul's thoughts raced. This mission would shape the future of Earth, test the limits of his growing feelings for Xander, and challenge his ability to bridge the gap between their species. But before he could fully process it all, a technician rushed up to them, his face pale. "Sir, you need to see this," he said, thrusting a tablet into Paul's hands. Paul's eyes widened as he scanned the data. Long-range sensors had detected multiple unidentified objects approaching the solar system there. Their size and speed suggested they were not natural phenomena. As he shared the information with Xander, Paul realized that his mission to the Lefeyan homeworld had just become even more critical. With the possibility of a large-scale invasion looming, the need for a strong alliance and advanced defensive capabilities had never been more urgent. Paul met Xander's gaze, seeing his own mix of determination and uncertainty reflected in her alien features. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bridging the gap between their worlds one step at a time. Paul's heart raced as he processed the information on the tablet. The unidentified objects approaching the solar system loomed like a shadow over Earth's future. He looked up at Xander, her skin rippling with a mix of concern and purpose.
"We need to move fast," Paul said, his mind already racing through the implications. "Now, this changes everything." Before he could elaborate, Admiral Frost's voice crackled over the compound's intercom system. "All senior personnel report to the command center immediately." As Paul and Xander hurried through the corridors, the compound buzzed with nervous energy. They entered the command center to find it alive with activity, screens displaying data streams and long-range sensor readings.
Admiral Frost stood at the center, her posture rigid as she addressed the assembled group. "As some of you may already know, we've detected multiple objects approaching our solar system. Their size and speed suggest they're not natural phenomena. We're looking at a potential large-scale invasion." The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over them. "Mr. Holmes," Frost continued, fixing Paul with her steel gaze, "your mission to the Ledaean homeworld has just become our top priority. We need that alliance and their advanced defensive capabilities more than ever." Paul nodded, feeling the pressure of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Understood, Admiral. When do I leave?" "Immediately," Frost replied. "We've prepared a ship with the latest in human-slaying hybrid technology. It should get you there in a matter of weeks rather than months." As the meeting adjourned, Paul found himself swept up in a whirlwind of preparations. He spent hours in briefings, absorbing every scrap of information about Levian culture and language. Dr. Chen provided him with detailed files on Levian biology, emphasizing the importance of understanding their physiology for effective communication. The night before his departure, Paul stood in his quarters, staring out at the starry sky. The enormity of his task took a toll on him. He was no diplomat, yet the fate of Earth might hinge on his ability to negotiate this alliance. A soft knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Xander standing there, her skin pulsing with gentle, calming hues. "I wanted to see you before you left," she said, her translator conveying the warmth in her voice. "To wish you luck." Paul smiled, feeling some of his tension ease. "Thank you, Xander. I just hope I'm up to the task." Xander reached out her hand, hovering near his arm in a gesture he'd come to recognize as a sign of support. "You will be. You understand us in a way few humans do. Trust in that understanding." As they talked, Paul found himself drawing strength from Xander's confidence in him. When she left, he felt more prepared for the challenge ahead. The next morning, Paul boarded the sleek hybrid ship that would carry him to the Levanian homeworld. As Earth receded behind him, he immersed himself in his studies, determined to make the most of the journey. Weeks passed in a blur of language lessons, cultural briefings, and technological familiarization. Paul marveled at the ship's capabilities, a testament to what humans and Liarians could achieve together. Finally, after what felt like an eternity in the void of space, the Levanian home system appeared on the ship's sensors. Paul's breath caught as he got his first glimpse of the Levanian homeworld, a swirling orb of blues, greens, and purples unlike anything he'd seen before. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Paul's eyes widened at the sight of the Lefadian capital city. Towering spires of what looked like living crystal stretched towards the sky, their surfaces shimmering with the same color-changing properties as Lefian skin. Vehicles that seemed to defy gravity wove between the structures in complex, graceful patterns. The ship touched down on a landing pad that pulsed with welcome lights. As the hatch opened, Paul took a deep breath, straightened his diplomatic uniform, and stepped out into the alien air. A delegation awaited him, led by a tall, imposing Lepasian, whose skin rippled with authoritative patterns. Paul recognized him immediately from his briefings. High Counselor ZTH, Xander's father. Paul raised his hand in the traditional Linnean greeting he'd practiced countless times. "Greetings, High Counselor ZTH. I am Paul Holmes, representative of Earth. I come seeking alliance and friendship between our peoples." Zruth's skin flickered with what Paul hoped was approval. "Welcome, Paul Holmes of Earth. We have much to discuss." As Paul followed the delegation into a grand crystalline structure, his mind raced. The fate of two worlds now rested on his shoulders, and the clock was ticking. Somewhere out there, unknown objects were hurtling towards Earth, and a Vorax betrayal still stung in recent memory. Paul steeled himself for the challenges ahead. It was time to bridge the gap between their worlds, not just with words but with action. The real work was only just beginning. Paul took a deep breath,
squaring his shoulders as he followed High Counselor ZTH into the crystalline structure.
Weeks later, Paul stood on the bridge of a Ligonian starship, Earth growing larger in the view screen. His mind raced with the wealth of information he'd gathered during his stay on the Lephaean homeworld. The ship carried not just Paul, but a delegation of Lephidian officials, scientists, and military advisors. As they entered Earth's orbit, Paul's communicator chimed. Admiral Frost's face appeared on the small screen.
"Welcome back, Mr. Holmes.
I trust your mission was successful?" Paul nodded grimly. "More than we could have hoped, Admiral, but the news isn't all good. We need to convene the United Earth Defense Council immediately." Within hours of landing, Paul found himself in a secure briefing room facing Admiral Frost and the collected leadership of Earth's defense forces. The air was thick with tension as he laid out the situation. "The objects we detected are indeed a Vorak battle fleet," Paul began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "According to Lephunian intelligence, they're armed with technology far beyond what we encountered during their initial incursion." Admiral Frost's eyes narrowed. "How long do we have?" "Based on their current trajectory and speed, 3 months at most," Paul replied. He gestured to a Lephaean official who stepped forward, skin pulsing with urgent patterns.
"High Commander Vex has brought detailed schematics of Lephaean defense systems. With their help, we might have a chance." Admiral Frost didn't hesitate.
"Implement a global state of emergency," she ordered her staff. Turning back to Paul, she added, "Mr. Holmes, given your unique position, I'm appointing you as chief liaison between our forces and the Lematians. Your priority is to integrate their defense tech with our systems." Paul nodded, already mentally cataloging the challenges ahead. "Understood, Admiral. I'll get to work immediately." The next weeks were a blur of activity. Paul found himself at the center of a whirlwind of meetings, briefings, and hands-on engineering work. The compatibility issues between human and Luadian technology proved daunting, but Paul's experience with both systems allowed him to devise innovative solutions. One evening, as Paul pored over schematics in his lab, a familiar face appeared at his door. Dr. Chen entered, his eyes alight with excitement.
"Paul, I've done it!"
Chen said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Leian reproductive process. I've adapted it to cure the Huxley syndrome." Paul's eyebrows shot up. Huxley syndrome was a rare but devastating genetic disorder that had long eluded human medical science.
"That's incredible, Stephen. Have you tested it?" Chen nodded.
"On a volunteer patient. The results are beyond our wildest expectations."
He paused, his expression growing serious.
"This could change everything, Paul. Not just medically, but diplomatically. It's tangible proof of what we can achieve together." As news of the breakthrough spread, more volunteers came forward. The success story strengthened the growing bond between humans and Ligarians, providing a much-needed morale boost in the face of the looming Vorak threat. Amidst the preparations, Paul received an urgent message from Xander. She had been working with the refugee fleet that had entered the solar system, and now she had a proposal. Paul met her in a conference room overlooking the Martian landscape. "We can establish a joint colony here," Xander explained, her skin shimmering with enthusiasm. "Your refugees have advanced terraforming technology. With our combined efforts, we could create a self-sustaining habitat for both species."
Paul studied the plans, his mind racing with the possibilities.
"This could be exactly what we need, Xander. A symbol of what we can achieve together." With Admiral Frost's approval, the Mars colony project began. Paul found himself splitting his time between Earth's orbital defense platforms and the fledgling Martian settlement. The work was exhausting but exhilarating, each day bringing new challenges and breakthroughs. As the Vorak fleet drew nearer, Earth's defense systems underwent their first real-world tests. Paul led a team of human and Levian engineers, fine-tuning the hybrid technology that now formed humanity's first line of defense. During a high-stakes test of the primary orbital platform, alarms suddenly blared through the station. Paul rushed to the control room, where a holographic display showed a critical power surge in the main reactor. "The surge has overloaded the safety protocols," a Lephonian engineer reported, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "If we don't stabilize it manually, we'll lose the entire platform." Paul's mind raced through the schematics he'd memorized. "The manual override is in the reactor chamber," he realized aloud.
"But the radiation levels are too high for Latians," the engineer finished. "Our biology can't withstand it." Paul met her gaze, his decision already made. "Prep a radiation suit. I'm going in." Minutes later, Paul found himself in the reactor chamber, the suit's sensors screaming warnings about the lethal radiation levels. With steady hands, he worked to reroute power and stabilize the reactor, acutely aware that the fate of Earth's defenses hung in the balance. As he made the final adjustment, a blinding flash filled the chamber. Paul felt the floor lurch beneath him as the platform stabilized. He allowed himself a moment of relief before making his way back to decontamination. The near disaster highlighted the precarious nature of their preparations, but it also showcased the effectiveness of the human-Leyan collaboration. As Paul emerged from medical clearance, he found Admiral Frost waiting for him. "Quite a risk you took out there, Mr. Holmes," she said, her stern expression softened by a hint of approval. Paul nodded, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through his system. "It had to be done, Admiral. We can't afford to lose any of our defenses." "Agreed," Frost replied, "which is why I've been appointed to head the newly formed United Earth Defense Force. The UN has finally agreed to a unified government for extraterrestrial affairs." As Paul absorbed this news, Xander appeared, her skin rippling with a mixture of concern and relief. "Paul, I heard what happened. Are you all right?" Before Paul could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A young lieutenant rushed up to them, his face pale. "Admiral! Long-range sensors have detected the first wave of the Vorak fleet entering the outer solar system." Paul exchanged a grim look with Xander and Admiral Frost. The moment they had been preparing for had finally arrived. As they hurried to the command center, Paul steeled himself for the challenges ahead. The true test of everything they had built together was about to begin. Paul's mind raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. The Vorak fleet had entered the outer solar system, and Earth's defenses were about to face their ultimate test. "We need to buy more time," Paul said, his eyes darting between Admiral Frost and Xander. "Our defense platforms are ready, but we need a way to slow down their advance." Xander's skin pulsed with a pattern that Paul had come to recognize as deep concentration. "What if we could infiltrate their fleet?" she suggested. "Disrupt their plans from within." Admiral Frost raised an eyebrow. "That's a high-risk proposition, but it could give us the edge we need. What did you have in mind?" Over the next few hours, Paul, Xander, and a team of human and Levian specialists formulated a daring plan. They would use a stealth ship, combining Levian cloaking technology with human piloting skills, to slip past the Vorak fleet's outer defenses and board their flagship. As the team made final preparations, Paul found himself in a quiet moment with Xander, her skin shimmering with a mix of anticipation and concern. "Paul," she said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens out there, working with you has been enlightening." Paul smiled, touched by the sentiment. "Likewise, Xander. Let's make sure we both come back to continue our collaboration." The stealth ship detached from the orbital station, its sleek form barely visible against the backdrop of space. Paul sat at the helm, his hands steady on the controls despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Beside him, Major Sarah Thompson monitored the ship's systems, her expression one of intense focus. As they approached the outer edges of the Vorak fleet, Paul's heart raced. The vastness of the enemy armada became apparent, countless ships stretching as far as the eye could see, their hulls gleaming with an ominous metallic sheen. "Contact!" Major Thompson whispered urgently. "Patrol vessels at 2 o'clock!" Paul's hands flew over the controls, guiding the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers. Xander, monitoring the cloaking systems, made constant adjustments to keep them hidden from the Vorak sensors. For several tense minutes, they wove through the patrol, their ship mere meters from detection. Paul held his breath, acutely aware that the slightest miscalculation could doom not only their mission but Earth itself. Finally, they cleared the patrol zone. A collective sigh of relief passed through the cabin, but their respite was short-lived, as the imposing form of the Vorak flagship loomed before them. "Our intel on their ship layout is outdated," one of the liaison specialists reported, her skin pulsing with concern. Paul's mind raced, analyzing the flagship's exterior. "Xander," he said, turning to his liaison counterpart, "what can you tell me about Vorak biology? Any insights that might help us identify weak points in their design?" Xander's eyes narrowed in concentration. "Their sensory organs are highly sensitive to specific frequencies. If we can locate their environmental control systems, we might be able to use that to our advantage." Paul nodded quickly,
formulating a new plan. We'll split into 2 teams. Xander, you're with me. We're heading for the Weapon Control Center. Major Thompson, take the rest and focus on sabotaging their engines. With practiced precision, they breached the flagship's hull using a combination of phase-shifting technology and good old-fashioned human ingenuity. As they entered the massive vessel, Paul was struck by the alien architecture, all harsh angles and pulsing biomechanical surfaces. The team split up, each group heading toward their objectives. Paul led his team through winding corridors, constantly on alert for Vorak security measures. They encountered their first real obstacle, in the form of hovering security drones, their sensor arrays scanning relentlessly. "Everyone freeze," Paul whispered, his mind racing for a solution. His eyes fell on the Lefian communication devices they carried. "Xander, can we repurpose these to emit a frequency that might scramble their sensors?" Xander's skin flickered with understanding. "Brilliant idea, Paul. Give me a moment." With quick, precise movements, Xander adjusted their devices. The air seemed to ripple around them, and the drone's erratic movements suggested success. They pressed on, now moving with increased urgency. As they neared the Weapon Control Center, the resistance intensified. Vorak warriors, their bioarmor pulsing with angry red energy, poured into the corridor. Paul and his team took cover, returning fire with their hybrid weapons. In the chaos of the firefight, one of the specialists was hit, a Vorak energy bolt searing through their protective gear. Xander immediately moved to the injured team member's side, her hands already reaching for her medical kit. "Cover us!" Paul shouted, laying down suppressing fire as Xander worked to stabilize their wounded comrade. Xander's knowledge of Lebedian first aid techniques proved invaluable. Within minutes, she had the specialist stabilized, their vitals normalizing thanks to a combination of Lebedian healing gel and human painkillers. With restored dedication, they pushed forward, finally breaching the Weapon Control Center. Paul rushed to the main console, his fingers flying over the alien interface. His eyes widened as he took in the complexity of the system. "This is more advanced than we anticipated," he muttered, his brow furrowing in concentration. "I can't fully disable it in time." Xander moved to his side, her skin pulsing with rapid patterns as she analyzed the system. "What if we reprogrammed it instead, turned their weapon against them?" Paul nodded, a grim smile forming on his face. "It's risky, but it might be our only shot. Let's do it!" As Paul and Xander worked feverishly to reprogram the weapon, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. The doors to the control center burst open, revealing a towering Vorak figure. The ship's commander, Grix, boomed, "Intruders!" Grix's voice filled with fury and disgust. "You dare to invade our flagship?" Paul's hands never left the console as he shouted to his team, "Hold them off! We need more time!" The room erupted into chaos as Paul's team engaged Grix and his guards. Energy bolts flew back and forth, the air thick with ozone and the sounds of battle. Paul's mind raced as he worked, acutely aware of the firefight raging behind him. He could hear Xander's labored breathing beside him, feel the tension radiating from her as she assisted with the reprogramming. A cry of pain caught Paul's attention. He turned to see Xander caught in Grix's massive grip, the Vorak commander's bioblade poised to strike. For a split second, Paul's hand hovered over the final command to activate the reprogrammed weapon. In that moment, Paul made his choice. He trusted in Xander, in the bond they had forged through their work together. His fingers flew across the console, completing the sabotage. Even as Xander twisted in Grix's grasp, to Paul's amazement, Xander executed a series of moves he recognized from human martial arts, breaking free from Grix's hold and sending the Vorak commander stumbling backward. "Now, Paul!" Xander shouted, her skin flashing with urgent patterns. Paul slammed his hand down on the activation sequence. The ship shuddered around them as the weapon powered up. But instead of targeting Earth, it began to turn on the Vorak fleet itself. Alarms blared throughout the flagship as Grix roared in disbelief and rage. Paul grabbed Xander's arm, shouting to his team, "We need to move now!" They fought their way back through the corridors, the ship systems going haywire around them. They rendezvoused with Major Thompson's team, who had successfully sabotaged the engines, leaving chaos in their wake. As they raced back to their stealth ship, Paul could feel the flagship breaking apart. They barely made it to their vessel, disengaging from the Vorak ship just as massive explosions began to tear it apart. From the safety of their retreating ship, Paul and his team watched in awe as the reprogrammed weapon unleashed its power on the Vorak fleet. Ship after ship succumbed to the devastating energy, breaking apart or fleeing in disarray. As they approached Earth, they could see the human Slayan defense platforms in action, mopping up the remaining Vorak stragglers. Admiral Frost's voice crackled over their comms, filled with a mixture of relief and pride. "Well done, team," she said. "You've given us more than just a victory. You've given us hope." Paul exchanged a weary but triumphant smile with Xander as they began their descent back to Earth. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but he knew their work was not nearly finished. As the blue-green orb of their home planet grew larger in the view screen, Paul's mind was already turning to the future, to the new challenges and opportunities that lay ahead in this new era of human-Kalayan cooperation. As the stealth ship touched down at the orbital station, Paul felt the weight of their accomplishments settle over him. The successful mission against the Vorak fleet had changed everything. Earth had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious, thanks to the combined efforts of humans and Lithians. In the weeks that followed, Paul found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The United Earth Defense Force, under Admiral Frost's leadership, initiated a massive expansion of Earth's space fleet. Paul was tasked with overseeing the integration of Lithian propulsion systems into human vessel designs. "These new engines will increase our ship's speed by a factor of 10, Paul explained to a group of engineers, his hands moving animatedly over a holographic display. "The Lithian phase shift technology allows us to bypass traditional limitations of spacetime." As he spoke, Paul caught sight of Xander entering the lab, her skin rippling with a pattern he now recognized as excitement. "Paul, you need to see this," she said, gesturing for him to follow. They made their way to the medical wing, where Dr. Chen was waiting for them. The doctor's face was alight with enthusiasm. "We've done it," she announced. "We've successfully adapted Livoian reproductive processes to cure human genetic diseases." Paul's eyes widened as he absorbed the implications. "This is incredible," he breathed, watching a monitor display the results of the treatment on a cellular level. Over the next few months, treatment centers were established worldwide. Thousands of human volunteers came forward, eager to benefit from this medical breakthrough. Paul watched with a sense of pride as the cooperation between humans and Levenians grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, as Paul was reviewing plans for a new deep space vessel, Admiral Frost entered his office. "Paul, we need you on Mars," she said without preamble. "The colony is expanding faster than we anticipated, and we need your expertise to oversee the integration of new terraforming techniques." 2 days later, Paul found himself stepping onto the red Martian soil, Xander by his side. The human Cleogean colony stretched out before them, a testament to what their species could achieve together. Massive domes housed thriving ecosystems, while construction teams worked tirelessly to expand the habitable areas. "It's beautiful," Xander murmured, her skin shimmering with a mix of awe and pride. As they toured the colony, Paul felt a growing sense of optimism about the future. However, that feeling was shattered when his communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. "Paul, we have a situation." Major Thompson's voice crackled through the device. "There's been an attack on the Lithian embassy in Geneva. It's not an isolated incident. We're seeing coordinated strikes against Levenian facilities worldwide." Paul's stomach dropped. He exchanged a worried glance with Xander before responding, "We're on our way back." The journey back to Earth was tense, filled with reports of escalating violence. Human extremist groups opposed to alien influence on Earth had launched a series of attacks that threatened to undo years of progress in human-Leyan relations. Upon their return, Paul and Major Thompson were immediately tasked with leading a joint task force to investigate and neutralize the threat. As they delved deeper into the extremist network, a disturbing pattern emerged. "These weapons," Paul said, examining the remains of a device used in one of the attacks, "they're not of human origin." Major Thompson nodded grimly. "We found traces of Vorak technology at several of the crime scenes. It seems some of them survived our last encounter." The revelation sent shockwaves through the United Earth Defense Force. As Paul and his team worked tirelessly to uncover the full extent of the Vorak manipulation, A new challenge arose in the form of General Marcus Blackwood. Paul watched with growing concern as Blackwood addressed the United Earth Council, his voice booming through the chamber. "We cannot continue to leave ourselves vulnerable to alien influences," the general declared. "It's time we take a more aggressive stance in protecting our interests." Blackwood's words found support among a faction of the council, challenging Admiral Frost's authority and threatening the alliance with the Levantians. Paul knew they needed to act fast to prevent a complete breakdown of interspecies relations. "We need hard evidence of the Vorax involvement," Paul told Xander as they prepared for a covert mission to the moon. "If we can prove they're behind these attacks, we can discredit Blackwood's position and reaffirm our alliance." Their mission to the suspected Vorak hideout on the moon was fraught with danger. As they infiltrated the hidden base, Paul and Xander discovered plans for a large-scale attack on Earth's major cities, aimed at fracturing the human-Selayan alliance once and for all. "We need to warn Admiral Frost," Paul said urgently, downloading the data onto a secure drive. "This attack could happen at any moment." As they raced back to their ship, alarms blared throughout the base. They barely made it to the launch pad before Vorak forces converged on their position. The ship shuddered as it broke free of the moon's gravity, but their relief was short-lived. "We've got company," Xander announced, her hands flying over the ship's controls. "3 vessels closing fast." Paul strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat, readying the ship's defenses. "Let's hope those Linian upgrades are as good as we think they are." What followed was a heart-pounding chase through space, with Paul and Xander pushing their ship to its limits to evade their pursuers. Just as they thought they had gained the upper hand, a lucky shot from one of the enemy vessels clipped their engine. "We're losing power," Xander reported, her skin pulsing with urgent patterns. "We can't maintain our course to the orbital station?" Paul's mind raced as he assessed their options. "We'll have to make an emergency landing," he decided. "Set a course for the nearest landmass." Their descent through Earth's atmosphere was rough, the ship bucking and shuddering as Xander fought for control. They crashed into a dense forest, the impact throwing them against their restraints. As the dust settled, Paul extricated himself from his seat, immediately moving to check on Xander. "Are you all right?" he asked, helping her up. Xander nodded, her skin rippling with a mix of pain and relief. "I'll survive, but we're not out of danger yet." A quick survey of their surroundings confirmed Paul's fears. They had crash-landed in a remote area, far from any immediate help. Worse, their communication systems were damaged, leaving them cut off from the United Earth Defense Force. "We need to get moving," Paul said, gathering what supplies he could from the wreckage. "Those extremist forces won't be far behind." As they set off through the dense undergrowth, Paul couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was just beginning. The fate of Earth's alliance with the Liensians now rested on their shoulders, and the clock was ticking. As they raced against time to prevent disaster, Paul and Xander pushed through the dense forest, their bodies aching from the crash and the arduous journey. The sound of pursuit echoed in the distance, spurring them forward despite their exhaustion. As night fell, they stumbled upon a clearing where a small communications outpost stood, its antenna reaching towards the starry sky. "There!" Paul gasped, pointing at the structure. "We might be able to contact Admiral Frost from there." They approached cautiously, wary of potential threats. The outpost appeared abandoned, its exterior weathered and overgrown. Paul worked quickly to bypass the security system, while Xander kept watch, her skin pulsing with alert patterns. Inside, Paul found the communications array. His fingers flew over the controls, establishing a secure connection to Earth's defense headquarters. "Admiral Frost, this is Paul. Do you copy?" Static crackled. Then a familiar voice came through. "Paul, where the hell have you been?" "No time to explain, Admiral. We have critical information about the attacks on Lepian facilities. General Blackwood is about to address the United Earth Council. You need to stop him." Paul quickly transmitted the data they had recovered from the Vorak base on the moon. He could hear the urgency in Admiral Frost's voice as she received it. "This changes everything. I'm heading to the council chamber now. Well done, you two. Get yourselves to safety." The transmission cut off just as the sound of approaching vehicles reached their ears. Paul and Xander shared a determined look before racing out of the outpost, disappearing into the shadows of the forest once more. Back in Geneva, Admiral Frost burst into the council chamber just as General Blackwood was mid-speech. "I implore you, members of the council," Blackwood was saying, his voice resonating with conviction. "We must take decisive action to protect Earth from alien influence. The recent attacks are the work of the Vorak, not the Lydians." Admiral Frost interrupted, striding to the center of the chamber. She presented the evidence Paul and Xander had recovered, revealing the full extent of the Vorak manipulation. The council members murmured in shock as they reviewed the data. General Blackwood's face paled, his port crumbling around him. Before he could mount a defense, security personnel moved in to arrest him. As Blackwood was led away in handcuffs, Admiral Frost addressed the council.
"We don't have much time. The Vorak are planning a large-scale attack on Earth's major cities.
We need to mobilize our defenses immediately." The chamber erupted into action, with council members rushing to coordinate Earth's response. Admiral Frost turned to her communication device.
"Paul! Xander! If you can hear this, we need you back at headquarters. We're mounting a counterstrike." Hours later, Paul stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, the flagship of Earth's new hybrid fleet. The ship hummed with power, its systems a seamless blend of human and Lefanian technology. Through the view screen, he could see dozens of similar vessels forming up around them. "All ships reporting ready, sir," his first officer announced. Overfruit. Paul nodded, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond. "Initiate phase shift drives. Let's meet the Vorak before they reach Earth." The fleet surged forward, the familiar disorientation of phase shift travel lasting only moments before they emerged in the midst of the approaching Vorak armada.
The enemy ships, caught off guard by the humans' sudden appearance, scrambled to respond. "Fire at will," Paul ordered, and the space around them erupted into chaos. The battle raged fiercely, with Vorak vessels shimmering in and out of view as they utilized their advanced cloaking technology. Paul's mind raced as he coordinated the fleet's movements, blending human tactical instincts with Lefarian technological prowess. A massive energy blast rocked the horizon, sending sparks flying across the bridge.
"Shields down to 30%, an officer shouted. Paul gripped his command chair, assessing their options. "Evasive maneuvers. Bring us about for another pass." As they turned, Paul caught sight of a familiar ship through the view screen. Xander's support vessel danced between enemy fire, its movements fluid and precise. A surge of pride and something deeper filled Paul's chest as he watched her work.
Suddenly, a barrage of Vorak fire engulfed the horizon. Alarms blared as systems failed across the ship.
"Hull breach on decks 3 through 7,
the damage control officer reported.
"We're losing power to engines!"
Paul knew they couldn't take much more. He opened a channel to Xander's ship. "We're in trouble here. We need to." Before he could finish, Xander's voice cut in. "I see it. Hold on, Paul. I'm coming to you." Paul watched in awe as Xander's vessel executed a series of impossible maneuvers, weaving through enemy fire to reach the horizon. With expert precision, she brought her ship alongside the crippled flagship.
"Prepare for emergency docking," Xander's calm voice came through the comms. "I hope you're ready for some teamwork." As the two ships connected, Paul felt a renewed sense of purpose.
He and Xander had always worked well together. But this was something else entirely. They moved in perfect sync, Paul coordinating the Horizon's remaining weapons while Xander guided their joined ships through the battlefield.
"Paul!"
Xander called out, her voice tight with concentration.
"The secret weapon! It's our only chance!"
Understanding flowed between them. Paul input the activation sequence for the electromagnetic pulse generator, a device powered by Lehenian crystal technology that they had hoped wouldn't be necessary. "All Allied ships, this is Commander Tyler," Paul broadcast to the fleet. "Prepare for EMP deployment. Protect your systems and stand by to engage." With a shared nod, Paul and Xander activated the pulse. A wave of invisible energy swept across space, overloading the systems of the Vorak fleet. Enemy ships drifted, powerless, their weapons and shields disabled.
"All ships engage," Paul ordered. The combined human and Laconian forces surged forward, quickly overwhelming the defenseless Vorak vessels. Within hours, the battle was over. Earth was safe. As the adrenaline of combat faded, Paul looked over at Xander, her skin shimmering with patterns of relief and joy. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Paul knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Weeks later, Paul and Xander stood side by side before the United Earth Council. Their actions had not only saved Earth,
but also solidified the bond between humans and Levatians. The council members listened intently as they recounted their experiences and presented their vision for the future. Members of the council, Paul began, his voice steady and clear, we stand at a crossroads. The threat we faced has shown us that we are stronger together than we ever could be apart. We propose the establishment of a joint human-land space exploration program to push the boundaries of our knowledge and to forge an even deeper connection between our species.
Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber.
Xander stepped forward, her skin pulsing with confidence as she spoke.
This program will combine the best of both our cultures and technologies. Together, we can achieve things neither of our species could alone. The council deliberated briefly before reaching a unanimous decision. The joint exploration program was approved, ushering in a new era of cooperation and discovery. Months passed in a flurry of preparation and anticipation. Finally, the day arrived for the maiden voyage of the program's flagship, the Stargazer. A crowd of humans and Lutians gathered to witness the historic launch, their excitement palpable in the air. As Paul and Xander made their way to the boarding ramp, they paused for a moment, taking in the significance of the moment. Paul reached out, gently touching Xander's arm. Can you believe how far we've come? He asked softly. Xander's skin rippled with a pattern that Paul had come to recognize as affection. From that first awkward meeting to this, it's more than I ever imagined possible. They boarded the ship amid cheers from the crowd, making their way to the bridge. The Stargazer was a marvel of engineering, seamlessly blending human and Lefean design elements into something entirely new. As they took their positions, Paul couldn't help but marvel at how natural it felt to work alongside Xander. Their movements were in perfect harmony as they began the launch sequence. Paul turned to Xander, a smile playing on his lips. Ready to explore the universe together?
Xander's eyes shimmered with excitement, her skin pulsing with a kaleidoscope of colors.
With you, always. The Stargazer's engines roared to life, lifting the ship from the launch pad. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Paul and Xander shared a look of pure exhilaration. They were embarking on a journey that would take them beyond the stars, into a future where the boundaries between their species would continue to blur, and new adventures awaited at every turn. As the blue of Earth's sky gave way to the endless black of space, Paul felt a sense of limitless possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that together, humans and Levenians could overcome anything. The universe stretched out before them, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and Paul couldn't wait to see what they would discover next.